Welcome to the Global Tech Leaders Podcast, where we help business leaders and individual contributors with actionable insights to hit their number and figure out the nuances of truly operating a business globally today, squeezing the essence of the lessons learned from the planet's top tech leaders. This is your guide to joining the fast track to global market scaling.
So welcome to today's show. We are joined by Maria Trivellato. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Maria, who's a recruitment director at Citrix. I was keen to have her on to talk to us today about the dynamic of culture that she holds dear and how she's developing that at Citrix as an organization. So welcome to today's show, Maria.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's our absolute pleasure. Citrix, obviously a household name in the tech industry. It has been around for a long, long time. It's a product I've used myself for quite some time in various instances throughout my career. And we'll certainly dive into some of those aspects of the tech and the growth the company's experiencing. I know there've been some recent job announcements, etc. But maybe if you could just share with our audience some of your own experience, what has brought you to your career in technology, what you're passionate about, and really kind of the decisions you've made along the way to take each step in your career. If you could share with us, please.
Absolutely, I can do that, Ross. Well, I could say my background is very, let's say, multicultural. Despite my name, I'm 100% Swedish, but married to an Italian, and live at the moment in Paris, in France. So a little bit mix, and started in recruitment, like many recruiters, I think, by accident or by chance, back in 99, 2000, and in executive search, and at the same time as the big internet boom came. So naturally, I moved into technology pretty quickly. And one of the companies actually I recruited for back in the days were Amazon, when they set up their businesses in Europe. So they were very small at that time. So it's amazing to see how they're growing. And stayed 8 years in executive search, and then I was headhunted into move into in-house, and I thought it was a great challenge to move to a client, and moved into Autodesk when they were about to move to the cloud and transform themselves and move all their recruitment in-house as well. So stayed there for 5 years, loved it, and then moved to their direct competitor, French one, Dassault Systèmes, where they needed someone to make their teams a little bit more international, I think, and also grow their recruitment team throughout EMEA. And stayed there for 3 years. Was ready, I think, after that to move back to a little bit more American company, I would say. And GE contacted me, and to help them build up their GE digital organization outside of the US. So it was a startup mode with nobody outside of the US. It was only me and the new MD Europe at that time, and it was a strange feeling to be sort of alone. We didn't have an office or anything, and at the same time we were in an organization with 150,000 people. So it was a magical feeling, but building everything from scratch, it was just amazing, and see that grow. And then moved to Citrix just now 9 months ago to help them transform themselves. And I think throughout my career and every single step I've made, all the roles I've had have been in organizations in transformation mode and taking on teams that needed either building something from scratch or transforming and grow a team. So it's always been the red line. I think, especially in the beginning, it was an unconscious thing because I just love to do it. And also in a very international environment, of course. I can't be local. I have to have international people around me.
Okay.
That's for sure. So yeah, and also with Citrix, that's why they came to get me as well, because they needed somebody who could help them through their transformation, moving to their cloud, and moving to a subscription model, and looking at the future of Citrix and the type of talents we need.
So I'm curious to kind of dive into that. I've had quite a bit of experience in US multinationals myself, and I suppose I've really seen that dynamic of what I call translating American into European speak. And what I mean by that is, you know, the company is growing at a tremendous pace. It's driven by, you know, growth out of North America. That's where it's normally headquartered. How do you find, well, first of all, I'm curious, kind of, obviously there's an attraction there to tech and to American multinationals. Just that I particularly like their work ethic, their never say die, nothing is impossible kind of approach. But we're quite different in Europe. You know, so we're somewhat cynical, but we're high energy, but we're cynical in some ways, and our laws are different. I'm curious, how do you translate that? How do you, not from a linguistics perspective, but how do you translate that kind of culture and get it done from a European perspective and work with the laws and legal jurisdictions across different countries in EMEA? What does that look like in your world historically?
Yeah, it's as you say, it's complex. And I mean, America, they have their rules, especially when you work with companies who have who are federal contractors, for example, like Citrix or like GE. We're under quite heavy rules. But in Europe, it's even more complex, and getting them to understand that Europe is not 50 states, but it's different countries, and we have different laws and different languages in all countries, and it's a challenge sometimes. But I think it's constant communication. I think we're getting through it because the Europeans are, I think, very collaborative and a little bit less aggressive than the Americans. So I think we're calming them down a little bit, and constantly communicating that, we cannot translate, for example, a marketing campaign into Europe, just taking it and do the same thing in Europe, because the pictures are not the same. When you talk football in the US, it's not the same football as we're talking football. Soccer.
Sure.
So it's it needs localization, and that goes for the talent as well. I think it's constant. Yeah, it's constant communication, I think, and learning from both worlds.
In terms of that talent, Maria, let's talk a little bit about job flexibility. So, I mean, the flexibility of working conditions is a HR issue that organizations must really perfect, I think, to attract the next generation of workers, millennials and past that. How do you guys, how do you approach that in terms of job flexibility, or how are you finding that now, considering a lot of organizations, based on what has transpired with COVID-19, have had to ensure that they become, extremely agile and extremely flexible?
No, I think that, the key word is, as you say, you have to be agile. I think the current crisis can be a catalyst for many areas. It can accelerate our move towards more flexibility, the digital working conditions, and higher productivity as well, I would say, because we've seen with us that we're actually as productive or even more productive working at home. And so has many studies have told us that it's the same with other organizations. And
I read a study recently that was stating between 15 and more productive, what they call smart working, where there's a bit of flexibility. They allow people to maybe, work 2-3 days remotely and, come in maybe 1 day a week. They've found that people are in fact more productive, as you say.
Absolutely. And it gives you better work-life balance and with that, more engaged employees. And so it's well, at Citrix, I mean, we're fortunate that remote work is in our DNA, I would say. We've been practicing flexible working styles for decades already, and we're using our products when doing it, of course, with no loss in productivity. But we've now, during this crisis, we're also helping our customers, and even before that, of course, but even more so now, the customers and partners, to really keep their businesses operational and their employees safe. Because I think when I'm bringing this back to talent, I think it's disrupting. I mean, we have a talent crisis in general in this sector that we've always spoken about. I mean, for the last.
What's your philosophy on that? Why do you think we have a talent crisis?
I think, well, we do not have as well. We're moving very quickly, and the highly educated and the rightly educated people are maybe not there yet. I mean, I saw it with GE, for example. We started recruiting UX designers and data scientists, etc., that had a speciality and an expertise on a certain thing, which didn't really exist in Europe yet. Well, my American colleagues asked us to bring UX designers from a specific school. And I said, well, those schools do not exist in Europe yet. They're coming, but they don't exist yet. So we have to wait for a few years. So I think that is a little bit the problem we have, and everybody are looking for the same talent. But I think what we can do is, I mean, this crisis can actually be an opportunity for us, not only for the tech sector, but for all sectors, to disrupt and fix the talent crisis to some extent. I think the young generation is born into a world of technology, and they're also expecting the flexible working spaces. And what you can say, consumer-like tech experience in all aspects of their work. And in the digital workspace and flexible working from anywhere gives you an access to new talent pools.
And then if you add in the rise in diversity and inclusion concerns, it makes it quite a complex environment for you guys in HR, I would imagine. Like, accommodating diversity and inclusion in the workplace is a continual concern from conversations we've had, and a continual challenge for HR departments. Things, social justice, human rights, employee engagement contribute to kind of the evolution of HR operations. So as a global entity, I guess you guys are trying to create an environment in which people of different genders and religions and ages and walks of life can work without the fear of judgment. Can you comment on that? What's your view on that?
I think we take it very seriously. We had worked with our TA team yesterday, actually. We had a global call about it, and we were discussing with the team, okay, what can we do as a team to bring in more diversity and really bring this question up to work better. And it's a tricky one, but we're working with many associations. We increased our work with Girls Who Code, for example, during this period as well, and many other organizations, to really help girls, help different diverse candidates to really bring up their skills as well, and to get people to, diverse talents to really get access to education and to equal job opportunities. And also, I think upskilling and reskilling talent is very important as well in in the new future of work, because I mean, we have, to some extent, it's hard to find right talent outside. So why not focus also on our current talents? And we have to invest in build up the skills in our workforce. And we need to work different. Well, we need also to change the way we work if we're going to have the new way of working in the future, what we call now the new normal. And people will need to learn as well how to work remotely and how to work differently. So it's a never-ending learning as well.
Yeah, and in fact, some researchers have claimed that even more diverse teams outperform their colleagues because of their ability to adapt to different social environments and circumstances. So it's an advantage to ensure that you have those type of programs in place that, you know, are inclusive and capture diversity in a very positive manner. I would wager you've probably had experience of finding, recruiting and onboarding people completely remotely and online without anyone ever meeting anyone in your organization. Am I right or wrong on that?
Oh, absolutely. We've done only so for the last 4 months.
So how is that? Describe for listeners kind of how that's going. Is it a bit odd, or is it plain sailing? And, you know, how do you check in and kind of validate that, you know, the new candidates are doing okay? Do you have a strong enablement program? You know, that kind of thing. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that works? Or how it's been working, sure, actually, for you guys specifically.
Yeah, it's been working actually better than I thought, because we moved remote, I mean, instantly, and the teams were up and running in 24 hours at home. And also in terms of onboarding, the IT teams, I think they needed 3 days to set everything up from home office, and then they were ready to onboard people remotely. So we, in terms of the interviewing, we had interview by video and everything before that, of course. There was a shift, of course, especially for the hiring managers, to take that last decision without meeting the person. That was a shift and a tough one, I think, which we saw also. The changes in behavior was that we had maybe a little bit more, the number of interviews in the process went up, because also on both sides, candidates needed more reinsurance, and so did we. And then also we noticed quite quickly that we needed to communicate a lot more, because for us it was pretty natural. For us it was obvious that we could do this virtually and that we could onboard people virtually, because we put up, even with the problem we had in the beginning with China being on lockdown as well, we didn't have any computers to give the newcomers, but we then asked them if they could use their personal computer, and we just put up our workspace on their personal computer. So then they had access to everything in a secure environment. So they could work. It was seamless. But the candidates didn't understand that from the beginning, of course, because they hadn't seen it work. So one thing that I had quickly to go out also as a message to the business was over communicate to the candidates, because we started seeing candidates almost withdrawing from the process because they were just, worried. And it's like, worried, first of all, should I actually change my job now in this period? We're having a lot of uncertainties. Should I add another uncertainty onto my stress by changing jobs? So we really needed to be there for them, the managers and the TA team, to constantly communicate, and more often than not. And it actually, it's worked very well. And we do, we have the video calls, we have all the virtual team meetings. The IT team has even had a 3-day virtual offsite, as they said, and it worked brilliantly, apparently. So, and
a virtual offsite. So that's a new one. That's a new one on me.
They used to be, Mayor, our CIO, she explained that they used virtual stick post-its that they moved around on the computer screens. I would have loved to see that, because I haven't seen it myself, but it works. So they're very, I mean, that's where we see as well, HR and IT. To be successful in this, HR and IT has to work together really closely. And not even that, I mean, the CEO, so the leaders of the organization, and also facilities, because everybody works together to make this work.
You mentioned there, Maria, an interesting point. You've obviously made that brave shift to hiring, recruiting, sourcing, interviewing, hiring, and onboarding remotely without ever having met somebody. And I find that fascinating, where you go through a process very much in a virtual environment, where there's etiquette to be had. There's kind of people almost on their best behavior. There's no body language that's as visible as there might be in person. And then you also touched on a point about the rise in technology. And I suppose that's a huge area around talent management. So obviously you've got talent acquisition and talent management within a HR function. Maybe could you share with us a bit about how you've kind of perhaps been exposed to technology, managing that process, from a numerical KPI perspective, etc., when there aren't those kind of personality nuances that the hiring manager might have as a leader to pick up on and form an opinion. Maybe could you share with us how those kind of developments has helped you manage talent a little better?
The development on different technologies, you mean?
Yeah, so how does the technology enable you to manage talent, and particularly in the context of this kind of modern remote virtual environment where you haven't had the chance, the hiring manager may not have ever met the person in a real sense in the same room, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. No, and it's true that it's more complicated, and I think it's well, you have to think differently about technology as well. I mean, we use videos as much as we can when we meet people. Then we realized as well, you shouldn't use videos in all calls, because it's actually pretty tiring to be on video all day long. and also having that, well, you can give so much technology to a person. But if you don't enable them to work with it, and if you don't give them that culture fit and that human piece to it as well, then it won't work. And that's where we saw also our culture piece with Citrix and what we are. It helped a lot, because you need that communication. We do the video calls, of course. We do the happy hours. We do the open room hours with the leaders, where you can ask anything that comes into your mind. So it's a little bit like your office is open door, and your team bumps in, because you can't do that physically now. So we try to do it virtually. And yeah, so it's you have to look at so many more aspects than just the pure performance aspect, and the security aspect, of course, because that's a very important one.
I'm also curious in relation to productivity there. You mentioned before we came on the call that remote work was in your DNA, and particularly now in light of this global pandemic with COVID-19. I suppose the first part of my question would be, have you worked more remote than before, I would imagine so? And then second of all, what have been your takeaways from a productivity perspective? I mean, I know my wife works in a business development function, and she is a large team, and their productivity is actually up considerably. But there are different dynamics there. There's home involvement, and if you have a family, these things change and priorities shift. What's been your takeaway from a productivity perspective in these kind of unusual times?
I think, well, to answer your first question, yes, I'm working. I've been working always. I mean, maybe 2-3 days a week from home, but or traveling. I mean, now lately it's been 100% from home, and will stay that for the next couple of months, I think. But I think one thing that has changed. Well, I mean, during this crisis as well, we had one thing that was totally different as well. We had the family at home, which you normally don't have. So you had that on top of it. So we saw it internally as well, and even with myself, you tend to work more hours. You are a little bit more productive, yes, because you're not traveling anywhere, and you're in your office 30 seconds after you you prepared yourself for the morning. But it's yeah, you had to juggle with the bad conscience of yeah, having screaming kids and barking dogs while you were in a call with your boss at the same time. So it's been a stress factor on top of it. But I think it's worked out well, and I think why it worked out well for us was also that we, from the beginning, the leadership of this company went out with the messaging that we are in it sort of together. Our core values are integrity, respect, curiosity, courage, and unity, and leading with empathy. And I think that's very true in this crisis, because examples, what happened here at Citrix was that they went out immediately to tell us that we had 100% of our salary if you or your family members were sick, or if you couldn't work from home, you were still paid. The few people that actually couldn't work from home. If you needed to take some extra time off to take care of your kids. I mean, we rearranged our meetings and our way of working, because I had team members who were very small kids. So they worked early morning, for example, and then late nights, and during the day they tended to their kids. And we had an extra bonus to all the employees to support extra cost of working from home, because not all of us had a home office to work from. We had weekly communications from our CEO and from HR and from our security officer about the situation and how we manage it and how the future looked like, etc. So it was, at all times, we were reassured, I would say, and listened to. We started Slack channels throughout the company, globally. So we started to have virtual happy hours in the evenings, and also things like donations to charity. All our events money, for example, that we were supposed to do recruitment events this summer, and we can't do them. So instead of taking that money and do something else with it, we actually took that money and gave it to charity instead. So it helped. It gives you a really profound message as well, how the company is and how we work, and we felt really supported. So it's worked really well, especially for myself. I felt that a very nice surprise, I would say, since I've only been here for 9 months.
That's cool. It sounds like a lot of thoughtful initiatives there, and kind of, you got to really try different things to see what's working, because it's unrealistic to think that you have a solution to every problem right now. It's only by that constant feedback and engagement that you capture the sentiment of pretty much the entire organization to move forward with various initiatives and programs and fun stuff that really kind of get people engaged. In terms of the engagement piece, is there an emphasis on continual learning in your organization right now? Like, how do you guys deal with that? And are you involved in any kind of immersive learning? There seems to be a rise in the amount of immersive learning programs that are taking place in organizations. And what I mean by immersive is, kind of situational, artificially produced scenarios and kind of role plays where people participate and really get to know a role or a persona or a situation, and they kind of virtually go through that situation and they're assessed and they learn faster and those kind of things. What's your view on learning? It's unfortunate when we talk to a lot of organizations, they spend so much money and time on recruiting really good people, but they spend so little time helping those people to be better, investing in those people. The average, I believe, is less than $1,200 a year that is invested in, on average, an employee's continual learning.
No, it's true. That I've seen throughout my career as well, right? I don't know how much we invest in terms of money, and that's for sure, but we do invest quite a lot because our focus, we know that our asset is our people, so we really put a very strong focus on the employee experience, and that goes through as well with the products that we develop. That it's a product that, well, the workspace should not only be a great technology, but it should be user friendly as well and do what you want to do. And I think in terms of learning, we do actually do what do you call the immersion learning? We're trying it now with hiring managers in one of our locations. Now we're doing it virtually, of course, but we're doing sessions in interview skills and how to interview techniques, etc., for new managers, and we actually give them CVs, and until next time we split the training in two, and for the next time they're going to actually do an interview, so we're playing the interviewees and then they're going to be the managers interviewing, and see if they learn from the first time on the competency-based interviewing and how to ask the right questions, etc., and really do it live, even though it's going to be virtual this time, but a lot of group forums and things like that.
Yeah, because a lot of people assume that if you're a manager, a middle manager, that you know how to interview candidates and find the right candidates properly. But the reality is, no one has ever taught you, and you think you know what you're looking for, but I'm sure there's so many times that middle managers have just not gotten the best out of a candidate, both in terms of the questions they ask and the knowledge to know what they're actually looking for, what a rock star, superstar employee might look like.
And often they don't know it before they actually start meeting the candidates. Then they start to understand what they're actually looking for. So we switch a little bit the profiles we're looking for throughout the whole process. But it's so true. Often they don't know, or they're asking questions they shouldn't ask, or and also one big thing is that they assume that everybody knows how great it is to work for a company, and the people from the outside don't. I mean, so many people don't know what a great company Citrix is. I didn't know that before I joined, and also you don't tend to, well, some managers don't sell. It's like 99% of our candidates are headhunted today by my team. So we need to sell to them. We need to make them make them, make our company sexy to them and make them want to join us, and not the contrary. They shouldn't sell themselves, or it's a 50-50 thing. It's like a date.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's important that there's a relatively level playing field there, that it's an exploration process, isn't it, for the fit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on both sides.
Yeah.
Because especially also for Citrix, and one thing that I didn't mention on, for example, the remote interviewing, and what we've realized now, especially on our leaders, because I'm recruiting several VP level staff now, and we realized, talking to the leaders, that okay, but we're actually not using any assessment tools at the moment for our sales leaders. So we brought one in now, because especially now when we can't meet the people face to face, we need it more, just as an sort of an extra tool to help us in the conversation. It would never be a tool that would reject somebody or would push somebody, but it would be an extra tool in our conversations with the candidates, and it actually helped us. And it's so important to find the right culture fit, also for the candidates, because I don't want to headhunt somebody out from a great role he has today, or he or she has today, and bring him to Citrix, where they would be frustrated or not happy in 3 months and leave.
I totally can get that messaging. And talk us through, like, what does a leadership profile look like for you guys? Like, when you're recruiting for somebody at the very beginning of their sales career, you know, from my experience, whenever I've had those conversations, I'm very much looking for that young, hungry, kind of ambitious person, starry-eyed, and puts the head down and gets stuck in. But like, talk us through what a senior leader looks like, and what a rock star quality of character is for you guys, from your perspective.
I think, an all-around business leader. I think more than just a sales leader. If I look at our VP roles that we're recruiting, and leading with empathy, somebody who can bring out the better of the teams, and not, of course, we are an American software company, quarterly driven, and everything with it, and of course we need we're aggressive in our figures, but we are. What was a very nice surprise to me when I joined is that it's a very human company at the same time. We're very focused on the employee experience and on the human piece of the company. So we're not that extreme aggressive. We don't need that. We need somebody who can push and who can lead by example, and also help us in the transformation, bring the teams to the next steps, because we are in a transformation. And it takes a while for this company, because we're not a brutal company. So we want to accompany our people and train at the same time. So it's it's maybe taking longer than some of the other companies, but we will get there and have some great employee experience with it.
And I suppose what I'm interested in learning, and we put remote work aside for a moment, throughout your career, when you started to when you kind of joined Citrix, what would you say are the biggest changes you've seen from a culture perspective and a workforce perspective? Like, what's changed in the way that we work now versus what we used to do, from a kind of an approach? And I suppose some of the things I've seen, just by way of an example, obviously we talked about remote work, that's fairly prevalent, but I think culturally there, you touched on a few interesting points that I sort of gravitate towards. You mentioned there around empathy and leadership. I would coin that as being kind of servant leadership. So your leader is there to serve you. and enable
Yes.
you to be successful. Your leader is not there to be your boss or to manage you. Your leader is there to show you how great you can actually be on your own and giving you the tools to do that. So I think that's been a
Yes.
dramatic shift for me. But maybe if you could share with us your own experiences there, and what's changed in the old school days of the bureaucratic or autocratic guy who was effectively a boss and was there to give out when things were going wrong, whereas praise and enablement seem to be the order of today. Would you kind of support that?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you see the difference today as well when you recruit the young generation, because they don't respect you just because you're their boss. You have to earn their respect, and you do that by growing them and doing all that you mentioned, by enabling them to grow and to be, and giving them the tools to be that great salesperson and coach them, and not by, some people told me that the old school is like you screaming in meeting rooms, and I've seen it myself, and I've seen sort of the older generation just sit silent, and I saw somebody in the younger end generation. This was not with Citrix, I can assure you, but just stand up and say, well, listen, and it was his boss. And it's like, listen, boss. And it's like, I'll come back to this meeting when you come now. And he just left. And people were just staring at him. And I'm like, good for you. So it's changing. The world has to change with it. We cannot manage the young generation as we managed before. And even we don't want to be managed. I don't calculate myself the young generation anymore, and I don't want to be managed like that either. So it's really, really changed.
And I suppose, I suppose my question would be, how more liberal can we go? I mean, what else is there? I suppose for me, it's always a delicate balance between that kind of younger generation, as you mentioned, who don't respect you because you're their boss. It's that kind of balance between, somebody who's actually good and can do the job and is open and humble for me, and coachable. They're kind of the key qualities. But how much more can we go by way of being a nice guy, versus that kind of millennial snowflake, the world owes me a living kind of direction, I suppose. What else do you see changing going forward if you were to put a crystal ball to it?
Yeah, we had a debate the other day with some other TA leaders globally on, well, what if the permanent positions would go away, for example, because we see some of the young generations, even on the software developer side, for example, they take on projects and then they go take a tour of the world and then they take on next projects. And so they're working as consultants and not as a permanent employee. But while some people really think that that's the future, the death of the permanent employees, I'm not sure that's true to that extent, because I still think, or very far away, because I still think that when we come into, the 30s, when we get our families and kids and we want to buy a house, etc., the society doesn't allow you to be that, just moving from job to job. You need, and you would want to have more stability as well. So we're still in it for a while on that piece. But it's true. It's moving faster than we think in crisis like this. We were talking a couple of months ago about future of work when we did our analysis of the market for Citrix, and now we're talking about the new normal instead, because we're here, and we'd never thought that 4 months ago.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think fundamentally it's about purpose, isn't it? To kind of help employees find purpose and meaning in their work, but also to give them a relative level of autonomy so that, they feel they have more say over how and when and where they work.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm with you on that. I'm not sure if that's the silver bullet or the answer that You have an organization full of non-employees and freelancers and people coming and going, etc., 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 because it takes a special kind of operational system to be able to manage all of that effectively, because there are a lot of the best functional areas in organizations are still process driven.
Oh, absolutely. And there is a risk for the culture as well in that sense. It's hard to build a culture when you have people coming and going all the time.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. But there is a rise in the kind of executive table thinking of looking at employees from an outcomes perspective rather than the inputs required to do a role. Do you see that at all? Do you see any kind of shift there where it's pretty much outcome driven or objective driven, where we see this in a lot of development teams, for example, where people don't care how you get there, as long as we reach the objective, because fundamentally people have different ways of working. You know, they might want to do it on different timelines, etc., and everybody's programmed differently. So to allow people at least that level of autonomy to be able to get the job done, and that isn't that really what it's all about, the outcome?
Oh, absolutely. And that's also, I mean, one of the parts of the transformation and what we call the digital transformation, but it's so much more than that today. It's not only the digital part, but also it's only, well, the technology, that transformation is only one part of it. It's, you have culture in it as well, and the people-centric design, as we call it. But I mean, the new way of work will require a cultural transformation in companies, and businesses will have to be building trusts, I would say, between team members and team leaders, and a little bit like you said, shifting from that presence-oriented mindset to a result-oriented mindset. Because you won't, and not all companies, I'm talking to friends now who work for French companies, for example. I mean, not all companies are ready to be there quite yet, but I think they have to in the future.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I suppose as we wrap up here, I'm kind of keen to understand a bit more on the culture. We typically ask the question of what does crack mean to you, CRAIC, and in each country, kind of that nuance of culture is different across EMEA, and you've certainly got the experience around Swedish, Italian, French, American multinational kind of diversity and kind of cultural aspects as well. What do you find kind of works best from a personality trait perspective, and kind of what have you learned from your cultural journey, as it were?
I would say that anywhere in the world, everybody still wants to have fun, and even working remotely, we shouldn't forget that. And even more so, I think, now when we're remote. So having that, and I can take myself, I don't have it enough, but we've done a couple of virtual happy hours, for example, even on a global level, where people had either the morning coffee and some people had the evening wine in their hands. But it's just having that downtime, and everybody wants it. I mean, being in Japan or in Italy or in Ireland, mm-hmm. Everybody's looking for that as well, and just respecting each other and our differences, but at the same time, building bridges to really work together.
I think it's very apt. I completely agree and support that. We're all human at the end of the day and social creatures, and we all bring something to the table by way of social diversity and personality traits and skills, quite frankly. So no, I think that captures it very, very well. Well, look, Maria, I really want to thank you for taking the time to be on the show and share your insights with our listeners. It's been a great pleasure and of great value. Thank you kindly.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Maria. Pleasure.
You've been listening to the Global Tech Leaders Podcast, designed for both established and aspiring career-focused tech rock stars, as well as helping leadership figure out how to speak global in today's multicultural world. For further details, check out sf-talent.com.